Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns, the podcast where three film buffs delve deep into the proverbial cisterns of their creative minds and attempt to pitch sequels to well-known movies after reviewing them. Today we're going to be discussing From Russia with Love, the second feature film in the James Bond series, which sees Sean Connery return as the famous secret agent. The film has 007 entangled in a three-way game of cat and mouse as MI6, the Soviets, and a third entity named Spectre try to acquire a MacGuffin, or Lecter decoding machine as it's known here. Bond, of course, gets entangled with the usual dastardly villains and beautiful girls while judo chopping his way to victory. The following podcast contains spoilers for From Russia with Love, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Dr. No, Kingsman, Jaws, and Boogie Nights?
Calvin, what does the name From Russia with Love mean? What does the title actually mean? I was wondering this.
It means, well, what would it mean? It's like, it is what it is. It's, From Russia with Love.
Why, who's coming from Russia with love in that film?
Well, Bond is going to Russia to meet Tatiana.
He signs it on the picture.
Well, yeah, but he hasn't, I don't know. It's an arbitrary way of getting the title into the film.
Okay.
So we're back on Bond, which is very exciting. So did you two rewatch the film for the purposes of the podcast? I know that you'll both probably have seen it years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it a long time ago, so yeah, I definitely needed to rewatch it. I couldn't remember that much detail.
I watched it maybe 5 years ago. In fact, it was shortly after I moved in with you, Calvin, at university, and you were sort of going on about how James Bond is the best, and I was like, right, well, I'll start watching more than just Dr. No then. I might have borrowed your DVD, in fact.
Yeah, I think, because you were going to make your way through all of them.
Yeah.
But then I think
still am.
you got From Russia with Love. I think you considered From Russia with Love to be very boring.
Yeah, I really...
That certainly was my opinion.
Yeah, I was immediately... I mean, should we start at the beginning? So that bit where Bond is just milling around at the start, and he's sort of like, what's going on? And then there's this guy pursuing him. The guy jumps out and throttles him. And then, and you're like, oh my god, James Bond's been killed! And then they pull off the mask, and it's all a trick. What is that? Like, is that going to be a training exercise where they just kill actual people and put masks on them for no reason?
It was entirely necessary to actually kill that guy.
I think that outside of the logic of the story, there was a producer who Harry Saltzman, who was one of the two guys who was producing Bond in the early days, and he had this fascination with tricking the audience into thinking that Bond was killed earlier, in the first pre-credit sequence.
Right.
So that's why in a few of the Sean Connery ones, some of them are quite in You Only Live Twice. Obviously, he gets fake killed at the start. And the start of Thunderball, the film opens on a coffin with the initials JB on them. I think it's a really stupid tactic.
Who's watching that and going, oh, they've killed off the main character. This is an interesting twist. I wonder where this is
going.
But
then they don't even let it breathe either. It's immediately shown to be a big trick anyway. So
I must admit, the first thing I thought when Connery was on screen, I was like, why is Sean Connery wearing so much makeup? Why has he made his eyes look like that? And then it was like, oh, it's a mask.
Yeah.
So,
but it does introduce us to Red Grant, who is quite a popular character amongst Bond fans.
I've got some basic complaints about the film. Might be we go through some of them, and Calvin can try and justify the film.
Okay, yeah. Let's run through the plot. I will say though that just before we get in, that this is one of the most sort of revered, respected Bond films. Really, amongst aficionados, it's considered well, even just regular film critics, it's considered one of the top ones.
It really killed the momentum of excitement I had to watch all of them dead in their tracks. I quite enjoyed Dr. No, and
if you want Bond to be a serious spy adventure, then there are sort of two camps. People who love From Russia with Love, and then people who love Goldfinger, which is much more bigger and flashier and campier.
I definitely prefer Goldfinger.
From the Doctor No episode, I was very much in the I want a proper spy film. But this is not what I wanted, because this is just boring.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. I just would like a bit more like tonal consistency. I think my main problem with most of the Bond films I've seen is that they have this weird way of flittering back and forth between being just really silly and fun and then trying to take themselves seriously in the next scene, and one thing will undermine the other, and it just doesn't quite work for me. But
should we get into the plot?
Yes.
My first thing here, my first note was this idea, and I'm going to give him a bit of leeway here because it was 50 years ago, but the concept that because someone plays chess, they're like a master technician or a strategician is just... it's such nonsense. It's like chess is like on a two-dimensional board with very strict rules about what can move where and who moves when. It is nothing like real life with all the variables that come in it, and the two do not tally whatsoever.
That's true, actually. That's never occurred to me, but you're absolutely right.
And like I say, it was 50 years ago, so I'll give him some leeway, but now it's such a cliche that, if we want to show this person's really intelligent, so let's show them playing chess and listening to classical music. That's because that means they're refined and super smart. It's such a cliche.
What about if they're playing 3D chess?
Ooh. Well, that at least is taking it to another level.
What about if they're playing that thing from Star Wars where they'll just sort of chuck some stop motion monsters at each other?
Why are they not showing the main bad guy? What's the benefit of hiding him?
Well, it's to create mystery. Like, who is this man?
But we're not invested in it at all. We have no idea who he is, so we're not even like, oh, is it this guy? Is it this guy? It's just like, well, if you show us his face, the response is going to be, right, I still don't know who he is, so what does this mean?
It does beg a twist that never really comes.
It's sort of like, it does create mystery. It's like, oh, well, what's going on with his face then? Is there something, weird?
There's a big scar down his face.
I think it also it means that he's something else in the room. It's like because if it was just a bloke in a chair, and we saw his face and everything, then he's just sort of like everyone else. But it sort of elevates him up above everyone else. I think those early scenes actually do a really, really good job of making Blofeld, or Spectre number 1, I think he's only referred to in the film, quite intimidating and quite threatening, really, just because of how everyone else in the room reacts to him.
You do get the sense of tension that they're scared of him, and they're supposed to be powerful people themselves, so that comes across. Oh, I tell you what I did like. I like the idea of this outsider third party, like getting two major powers to fight off against each other, so they could then just sweep in and like clean up the pieces. Yeah. I really like that as a kind of plot.
Well, that's in the book, of course. That's Spectre is not in the From Russia with Love novel. It's Smersh in the novel, who were a real. They were a real Soviet.
Smersh.
Oh my god! They were Smersh. Smersh, not
Smash. Sorry, there's nothing particularly funny about that. I just.
They were like a real Soviet.
Well, I thought what was interesting about that and having that separate entity at the time it was being made is you don't really want to make a film where the Soviets and the Brits are going against each other, and the Brits have to win, because ultimately you're just going to piss off the Soviets in real life, and nobody really wanted to do that at the time because it was a delicate situation.
No, that's very true.
So having that as a separate party that you can have as a proper bad guys, but still use the Cold War tension as the backdrop, I think was quite clever, actually.
And then, with that setup, we get about a good half an hour worth of exposition before Bond actually gets sent on his mission, which is...
Bond doesn't even appear in the film until like 19 minutes in. What's that about? It's a fucking Bond film. That's you certainly wouldn't get away with doing that.
No,
today.
but when you boil it down, it's quite simple, but it feels more complex because they make such a big deal out of showing you every step along the way of, like, going to the training camp and Rosa Klebb recruiting Red Grant, and then when she gets the girl, there is a lot of exposition. To be honest, even like Kronstein, the chess player that we were talking about, he doesn't even really serve much of a purpose. His like job is to basically just show up and say, I've concocted this brilliant plan. And it's sort of like, we don't need that, really. We don't need to know the curator of the plan. They can just get on with it and we'd all be fine.
Yeah. It does mean they get to kill him off later.
True.
You know, kind of have that moment, don't they? But yeah, I agree. But there's so much irrelevance in this film. Okay, here's another problem I've got. I was a bit worried that what's his name? Grant? Donald Grant.
Donald Grant, yeah, Red Grant.
I was a bit worried that maybe his towel wasn't small enough.
In the bit when he's getting his massage on the lawn.
Just like a flannel that dangled over his penis would have been more appropriate. It was just obscenely small. I don't know how they managed to get it tied around it.
How do you feel about Robert Shaw in this film? Because now it's funny coming back to From Russia with Love now with the perspective of the Daniel Craig era, because like him and Robert Shaw do look very much alike.
Yeah, he's a bit more rough and ready.
Yeah.
Isn't he? He's a fighter. He's
Yeah.
a bruiser.
So Rosa Klebb is the Spectre agent in charge of sort of. She's not actually in charge of Spectre, or she didn't curate the plan, but for some reason they put her in charge of the mission.
Well, here's another problem I've got with the whole plot, right? So, basically, Rosa Klebb, she's a Soviet, but she's defected, and nobody really knows that yet. So, when she approaches Tatiana, Tatiana thinks she's still a Soviet, her superior. So, if the whole point of this is to get a decoding machine, why doesn't she just go, hey, Tatiana, I'm your superior, can you go and get me a decoding machine and give it to me? Rather than all this nonsense about, oh, you have to pretend that you fall in love with a photograph of James Bond, and now you want to defect as long as.
Well, that's because they want revenge for Dr. No. They want to kill James Bond specifically, as well as getting the Lecter. The Lecter's like the MacGuffin, the plot device, but.
Yeah, I know, but it just doesn't quite hang together, does it?
No, fair enough.
It's like
it is an incredibly elaborate plan. Like
that is unnecessary as well.
Yeah, but I like it that when we do get to London, like Bond and MI6 kind of know it's a trap. They're sort of like, yeah, this probably is, you're being lured there, so watch out. I like that because it means that they're not stupid, because it is so obviously a ploy.
But I do like it. He basically agrees to go because he might get a shag out of it, which is it's very Bond. I like that.
Very Bond. But yeah, in these early scenes, we're also introduced to the Bond girl quite early on. Obviously, in Dr. No, she was introduced it was like an hour into the film. Whereas here we get Tatiana Romanova, like straight up, who was, I think the actress was like some kind of Miss World or Miss Ukraine or something like that. When they cast her. Bit of a disappointing name, though. Do you agree?
Is it not suggestive enough?
Yeah, it should have been rolling over. That somehow. Maybe. How many of the? I'm guessing the name is from the book, but how many of the names of Bond girls were just utterly childish, like nonsense about euphemisms for vaginas?
Well, I'm happy you brought this up, Alan, as I've prepared a little game here for us to play. Bond girl or drag queen? So I'm gonna give you names, 2 names, and you have to tell me which one is the Bond girl and which one is the drag queen. Okay, but gonna start with a. I think this is a relatively easy one. Okay, we have Holly Goodhead or Gloria Hole. Who's the Bond girl? Who's the drag queen?
I remember Holly Goodhead from whichever Bond film it was, because that was, I think, the most ludicrous Bond name I.
That is the worst. Yeah, that is like.
So what was the other one? Gloria Hole must be the drag queen.
That is more subtle. That's the surprising thing.
Yeah, right.
But okay, which film is Holly Goodhead in?
Moonraker.
And what line takes advantage of this name? What's the quip? What's the Bond
isn't that the one where she sits down and says, "Hello, I'm Dr. Goodhead," and he just goes, "A woman."
Yes, that's it. That's the one. That's the thing. There's no real like innuendo made her name in it. Really, it's just Goodhead, and I think because Bond is like more like sort of raising an eyebrow at the fact she's a woman rather than
that is my favourite.
What
moment.
the fuck is your name?
Yeah, it's my favourite moment in the Bond franchise out of all of the films that I've seen so far. that single 5-second moment is just incredible.
Okay, next one. I have Mona Lot,
Okay.
or Xenia Onatop.
Yeah, I think Xenia Onatop has a very sort of a Russian-sounding feel, which is very Bond.
I agree.
Certainly early Bond.
I agree.
So I think Xenia on the top is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Correct. Okay, next we have Rosy Cheeks or or Chew Me.
Sorry, what? Chew me.
Chew Me. Yeah.
Chew Me, Chinese, I presume.
I don't even get it.
Chew Me.
This is like the in Austin Powers, where there's the two girls called Fuck Me and Fuck You, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Fuck Me and Fuck You.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Something
Like,
along those lines.
the parodies of this have to take it to such extreme levels that it almost comes round the other side, and they just have normal names again. It's bizarre.
I'm not sure about this one. I think Chew Me must be the Bond one. Because Rosy Cheeks, I imagine, is a very fat drag queen. I assume.
Sol, do you agree?
For the sake of competition, I'm going to go the other way round.
Well, Alan is correct.
Ah.
Chumi is in. She has like a couple of lines. She's swimming naked in a pool in the Roger Moore film, The Man with the Golden Gun.
Ooh.
And yeah.
Dear.
Okay.
Is Rosy Cheeks a big fat drag queen?
I don't know actually. I did not see a picture of Ms. Cheeks.
Ms. Cheeks.
Okay, I've got a couple more. This one isn't so much innuendo. We have Ginger Snap or Strawberry Fields.
Oh wait, I think Strawberry Fields is a Bond.
Yeah,
girl.
I'm pretty sure I
that.
recognise
But
that
Ginger
name.
Snaps is because at least Ginger could be a name or a nickname. Strawberry is nobody's name. That doesn't make sense. So I think once again, the drag queens have the better name, but I think Strawberry Fields is a Bond girl. Is she a ginger Bond girl?
Well, yes. I mean, you are correct, but it is a little bit of a trick question, as there is a drag queen called Strawberry Fields,
Okay.
as well as being in a Bond film. Gemma Arterton in Quantum of Solace.
Does at any point in that film does M say, Bond, I've got to send you back into the field?
No, sadly
No,
not.
don't even do that. Okay.
Sadly. Okay, I've got one more. There's Venus Envy. Or Plenty O'Toole.
I've got to say that the drag queen names are much cleverer. Plenty O'Toole, I've heard that before. I'm sure that's a Bond girl.
But then Plenty O'Toole sounds like they're saying I've got a little something hidden away down here, whereas. So I'm doubting.
Let's be clear. Plenty is not a name. It does not sound like a name or remotely related to anything that might be similar to a name.
Yeah.
They've just gone with, okay, O'Toole, that's a name, and it's got the word tool in it. What can we put in front of that? Think of any names that make sense? Nope.
Plenty O'Toole is the Bond girl. Diamonds Are Forever.
Calvin, what in your expert knowledge, what's the most egregious Bond girl name? Is it one of those? Or
I think Goodhead is probably... Because it's just so... It's like, it's not even clever. It's like, it's not... They don't even make a joke out of it in the film, really. It's
You do spend the whole film waiting for like the pun that they're setting up, and it just never comes. I must say, this is the thing that really struck me when I first watched From Russia with Love, because I'd seen the Austin Powers films already, but I'd always assumed they were very, very broad parodies. Like they kind of took the idea of Bond and it's so silly, and we'll just kind of do an English spy comedy. But then I watched From Russia with Love, and there are like specific characters and scenes and like moments all of a sudden that start popping up, and you realise, they were, like Frau, for example, is she German? That woman in From Russia with Love is just Frau in Austin Powers.
Rosa Gleb. Well, the Rosa Gleb character, like that has become sort of like a stock villain character in Bond films. The sort of old, foreign, unattractive lady. Did you pick up the...
Does he ever shag any of them?
No. That's why.
Just to do his
obviously.
duty.
Well, they make her a lesbian, of course.
Oh, of course.
Doesn't he cure her?
No, that's Pussy
No,
Galore
that's
in the next
Pussy
film.
Galore.
Oh, okay. What's Octopussy again? Was that a Bond girl? What was that?
Yeah, that's a Bond girl. Octopussy.
There's got to be a porn star called Octopussy who's got some sort of birth defect.
Oh, God. So, should we get back into the film?
Yeah.
So, is it at this point that you started getting, bored with it? Like, sort of half an hour in, before Bond, gets to Istanbul, or...?
I stopped making notes at some point because I just sort of lost track of it. Before we get to that, Q, okay, they've got actual proper Q now.
Yeah.
What's quite annoying, and I know this is a bit of a standard complaint, Q presents Bond with a gadget, and it's just like, okay, well, let's see how that's going to play out later on. Everything he gives him will be used at some point in the film. And it's not like subtle foreshadowing or exposition. It's just like, oh, this is a bomb that blows up if you twist this the wrong way. Like, I wonder if someone's going to open his briefcase.
James Bond is the go-to example of that in when people explain film writing and all that sort of thing, and they talk of Chekhov's gun and these sort of things. I think James Bond is the go-to example for, what do they call it? It might be called a reverse Chekhov's gun. It's essentially where they write a point into the script where someone needs to escape from an elaborate trap, and then they kind of think, okay, we'll just go back to the start and write in a bit where someone goes, okay, here's your magic thing that will get you out of that situation.
Yeah.
It's funny you should mention that because that's exactly what I did in my pitch. Because I noted this idea that Q presents Bond with a thing, and then I just wrote my idea, and I thought at some point he's going to have to get out of the situation, and I'm going to work it out backwards, and then I'll introduce it later. So literally exactly that. Mine is more ridiculous than most of them, but
So Bond gets his briefcase and he heads to Istanbul, where much of the film takes place.
I was questioning that because I was reading about it. It was like, oh yeah, they're in Istanbul. I was like, were they in Istanbul? I don't remember seeing anything of Istanbul. I don't know if I was just sort of so disengaged with it by that point.
They're in the Hagia
Did
Sophia.
they use the local scenery and stuff? I didn't sort of connect with any of it. And I don't know if that was just because I'd phased out by then or...
They were in the Hagia Sophia at one point, and they go down into the cisterns. That's a famous tourist spot now in Istanbul. It wasn't at the time, of course.
What, when they were in the sewer?
Yeah. You can go. I went there. It's really cool.
It's a famous sewer, isn't it?
It's really cool. I think it was
Have they got a little periscope that you can look at ladies' legs with?
Sadly not. Yeah.
I've got some questions actually regarding the plot. Basically, okay, he goes to Istanbul, and then I like the Ali Kerim character. He was an interesting character. He had something about him. It was sort of, something to work with there. I like how he managed to survive death because he was getting busy. So the bomb didn't get him. Yeah, I thought it was a good character and they did some interesting things with it, but then there was so much in the middle of the plot that seemed irrelevant. They go to a gypsy camp, which seemed to be entirely for the purpose of so Connery could shag some gypsies. And then it kind of became relevant when they got attacked. And then they went and got revenge on someone and shot someone in a giant mouth. And none of that seemed really relevant. Apart from it, I know it's kind of basically the point of it was, it looks like the Soviets are behind it all, and so it's starting to kick off. Was that it?
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, the gypsy camp was obviously, we need to, the girls fighting. It's just meant to be titillating, really. They have the belly dancer going around, and I love that those two gypsy women are fighting over who gets to marry this one guy, and the fight is interrupted by the attacking Soviets. So they're like, right, Bond, you have to decide who gets to marry the man. And presumably he just shags them both, and there's just they.
And then what? Does he pick the one that was best, or?
Well, this
worse?
is it. It's because I'm always fascinated by which one he actually picked. Because later on when he's driving away in the car, you see one of them is on a balcony, and then one of them is kissing Bond goodbye, and I'm like, well, did she get the guy? Did she not? I don't really know, but. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't feel entirely relevant to the plot.
I must say, it does feel quite meandering. I think, I mean, when I really start to love the film is when they get on the Orient Express and all the train stuff.
Meandering is it. That's why I switch off in these films when they don't work for me. It's because I just start to feel like there's no coherent line through the story, and it is just a series of interconnected set pieces. I think that's why Doctor No kind of works for me, but most of the Bond films don't. It's because that one does feel a lot more stripped down and just very straightforward, whereas From Russia with Love feels very much like a sequel where they felt, well, we've got to go bigger, we've got to have more than one Bond girl, we've got to have all these things happening, and it just doesn't feel as... It's a bit like Spider-Man 3. It's that sort of all over the place kind of vibe.
But yeah, no, I think this half an hour chunk when they're on the Orient Express is really quite tense and fun. I like that Grant's on the train. Obviously, Kerim gets killed.
Does it bother you at any point? 'Cause this is something I picked up on Doctor No as well, but the dubbing of the actors, it doesn't quite fit, and it just feels like I'm watching a spaghetti western or something.
Yeah.
And it's it really distracts me.
Yeah, it is these first few films. I think that once you get to Diamonds Are Forever, the bad dubbing stops. Because I think of the early films, the first 5 Connery films, only Pussy Galore in Goldfinger, the actress actually kept her voice. All the other actresses are dubbed by other people.
Tell you what, though, the music was pretty good.
Oh, the music is really good in this film, isn't it? I love the song and...
Yeah, I was just quite struck by the score. It just seemed very, very nice and big and cinematic.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it very much sets the tone for James Bond. There's a very distinct sound in the Bond films, and yeah.
They really upped the budget on this one after Doctor No.
Oh god, yeah.
I think they literally doubled the budget, didn't they?
Yeah.
But Doctor No, for me, felt much more spectacular. It had very big sets and was... production design seemed stronger.
Yeah, they did lose the production designer for this one. Ken Adam, who did... I mean, he's famous for the sort of the big, elaborate villain bases. Yeah, that was him. And they got a different production designer for this one. I think Ken Adam was off... he was doing Doctor Strangelove at the time, so he couldn't come back. He designed the wall room.
Has he just got a thing about doctors?
And then, of course, we get the famous fight scene on the train, which is another sort of series standout for a lot of people. I mean, did it stand out especially to you watching it, or...?
Yeah, it's just a fight scene. Small space.
And then we have the Coda, where Rosa Klebb and her famous blade shoe.
I watched this film a couple of weeks ago, and then when I was writing my stuff, I was like, I couldn't remember how he killed Grant, or if he'd killed him or not. And that's how little it had impacted on my memory. I had to look it up to see what happened. I remember him getting the gas in the face because he opened the briefcase wrongly, but I couldn't remember how it had kicked off after that.
Yeah, no, they fight. He's strangled with his own Garou watch.
I know. I know. Something we haven't mentioned. They get filmed having sex.
Yes.
And then it kind of never really comes back into play, and he just sort of throws it in the river.
Yeah, it's again, that's another just plot complication. Yeah, actually, I mean, talking about it now, it just has sort of made me realise just how many sort of plot dangling elements are in here, and it is really stuffed full of stuff that doesn't really matter or play out in the grand scheme.
Stuffed full of stuff sounds like the name of a Bond girl.
Shall we get to the pictures?
I'm going to go first.
Yes.
Okay.
Because mine, as we've discussed now, I just thought it was really boring. So I thought what I'd do is try and do a straight remake. I've taken the same plot, the same characters and all that, but I'm just going to try and make it better by adding more interesting things. I got a little bit out of hand with it. I started adding all kinds of things into it, but hopefully it'll work. And I tried to make it very Bond.
Okay.
So I did think though what would have been better as a general thing for the whole film was if rather than sort of us knowing about Spectre straight away, if it set it up as a classic Cold War face-off, and then it only kind of developed later that it's like, oh, actually, someone else is doing this. So the bomb goes off, and it's like, oh, the Soviets have done a bomb, and then the Soviets are like, oh no, we didn't do it. And it's sort of, so that's a bit of a twist ending that you find out that it's a whole separate element. And you find out that Rosa Klebb is actually not working with the Soviets anymore and all that sort of thing. So I thought that would have been a better way to do it and actually have a bit of a twist ending.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
That would actually make a lot of sense.
Give a bit more suspense.
Yeah, because at the moment it is just you see the whole thing is like planned out, and we know as an audience we know everything before Bond does, which is always sort of a tricky narrative device, I suppose.
So are we imagining this with same actors, same sets?
Yeah. First of all, we're going to open with the scene that actually has James Bond in it. And I think that your best Bond opening sequences is your fun ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bond is just sort of like he's sitting out with a cocktail, he's in the sun, and we see like a shadowy figure sneaking up on him, and we don't see them properly, like you just see their leg or arm or something like that, and you think it's someone sneaking up on him, and his eyes are closed, he might be asleep, he's not reacting, and then just as they get close and think like something might happen, he goes, "Oh, you'll have to do better than that, my dear." And then the camera like whips around, and it's like not a menacing enemy, but a beautiful young lady. He like grabs her and pulls her over his lap, and he's gonna spank her, because that's what he does. And she's giggling and all sorts of this. And then just as he's about to do it, the phone rings, and he goes, "Shaved by the bell." So he answers the phone. I've got a lot of. I'm trying to put some Bond lines in here. So M is on the phone, and he's ringing up saying, "Look, it's all kicking off with the Russians, so we need you here immediately." And Bond goes, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." And then he looks down at the girl that's still over his lap, and he goes, "Make that 24 minutes." And then hangs up the phone. And then he says, "Bottoms up," and then downs his drink. We go to M. We have a bit of exposition. So we just find out that something's kicking off with the Soviets, and he has to go over to Turkey to help sort it out. Q comes in, and it gives Bond a gadget, which may or may not come into play later. We'll have to wait and see. Q says, "This is a gadget that's it's a very tiny poison dart that fits into the urethra." So in case you're shagging an enemy and you need to kill them.
Oh, wow.
And Q says, "Pay attention, 007. The force of ejaculation is enough to fire the dart and will kill the victim instantaneously. So all you have to do to dispatch the enemy is shoot your beans right up her mouth."
Oh my god.
So that's like I say, maybe that will be relevant later in the plot. We'll find out. Okay, so
is her muff the name of the Bond girl?
Hair muff.
So Bond travels to Turkey and he liaises with Ali Kerim. They checking out the local scene, but they bond. Or James Bond and Kerim, they find a mutual interest in lust for women. And Kerim explains that he has 40 wives, and Bond says, "Why marry them when you can just use them and dump them?" So Kerim responds,
That's not even a quip. That's just
no, it's not. No, it's not. Well,
James Bond gets married in one of them, doesn't he, Calvin?
Yes.
But then they kill her instantly.
After that, does he ever, like, in subsequent films go, "Sounds like my ex-wife"? Because I just think that'd suit him.
Okay, so Bond asks, "Why marry them when you can just use them and dump them?" And Kerim responds, "You find me a good abortionist in downtown Istanbul and I would agree." And they laugh heartily.
So we're back to James Bond abortion pitches in the 60s.
Kerim then introduces Bond to his wives and invites him to choose one to spend the night with. He said and explains, "I see women as my property and I'm happy to share them with my friends and work colleagues." Bond chooses the whitest one and then takes her to her bedroom and fucks her. The next day, they actually get down to some business. So they're investigating the recent bombings and all that sort of thing, trying to figure out what's going on. Bond meets up with a fellow spy named Donald Grant to find out some information. So I'm introducing Grant earlier here, and I'm keeping his sort of double agent nature a secret. So at the moment, Bond thinks he's a fellow spy. Now, for reasons that aren't fully explained in the film, they meet in a Turkish bathhouse and conduct the entire conversation whilst wearing tiny towels that barely cover their genitals. At one point, Grant is offered a cup of tea but refuses, and this makes Bond suspicious. So that's his first warning. So we need to introduce now a beautiful lady. So we've got Tatiana, she's a stenographer or a secretary or something. So her boss, Rosa Klebb, she tells her to seduce James Bond and then kill him. So they come up with a plan involving a decoding machine, pretty much as it is in the film. And we don't know about Rosa Klebb's double nature either. They meet up and he shags her, of course. But unbeknownst to him, they are being filmed. But after they've slept together and she's fallen asleep, Bond sneaks out. He meets up with Ali Kerim in the hallway of this hotel. And they decide to pull the old boat that rocked switcheroo. So Kerim sneaks in under cover of darkness because they're sharing their women. And then, so Bond waits outside. He's going to let him do his business. And then he hears gunshots. So he smashes into the room, turns on the light to see Tatiana standing over Ali Kerim's body with a gun in her hand. Now, she's very confused, obviously, because she thought she just killed Bond. Bond acts quickly. He knocks the gun out of her hand. He calls her a communist pig dog and then beats her to death with a shoe.
Oh, my God.
So... it becomes clear that Rosa Klebb isn't with the Soviets anymore and she's defected. So Bond gets in touch with Donald Grant again, meets him at a Turkish bathhouse. He asks him to help catch Rosa Klebb. Now Grant scratches his nails down a conveniently placed chalkboard and says...
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, my God.
And he says, "Y'all know me, know how I earn a living. I'll catch this bird for you, but it ain't gonna be easy. Bad fish. Not like going down the pond chasing bluegills and tommycods." This is the final straw for Bond. He realises Grant is not a serious agent. And they wrestle in a strictly heterosexual Greco-Roman style. Eventually, Bond manages to overcome Grant, has him in a headlock from behind. He snarls, "Smile, you son of a bitch," and then snaps his neck.
I thought you were going to go down the whole, like, he was going to put some like, a fire extinguisher in his mouth and then shoot that.
I thought it was a bit too much. Bond, he's just killed a naked man, so he feels like he needs to relieve some tension. So he visits a massage parlour. But, with the clever use of some eyeliner, Rosa Klebb has disguised herself as a Thai girl who has been trafficked to Turkey to perform happy endings on Scottish tourists. So, with one hand on Bond's erect penis, and the other clutching a knife behind her back, she waits for the perfect moment to strike. Just as Bond reaches climax, she goes to plunge the knife into his chest, but at the last second, she gets a tiny poison dart right in the eye.
The eye?
She screams and falls to the floor dead, with secret agent semen running down her face. Bond sits up and says, "I hope you see my point," before calmly dressing and leaving.
So, where did the dart come from?
His penis!
Oh, I've forgotten about the setup.
I was hoping that I'd left enough distance between them. I'm like,
oh, that's so funny.
As a final act, we see a mysterious man whose face is never shown. He has a grey jacket and a white cat. He talks to himself. "Ha-ha, Mr. Bond, you may have won this round, but I still have an ace up my sleeve." And we see him fondling a roll of film. Now, the film arrives at a top journalist's desk. But when it is viewed, because Sean Connery is so hairy, it is mistaken for a low-budget porn parody of King Kong and is immediately dismissed. And that is the end of the film.
Oh, amazing. I absolutely love that.
My pitch is sort of on a similar tangent as the very end of Alan's one there. So yeah, we open on Bond walking around somewhere at night. Someone's following him dressed in black. It's basically the opening of From Russia with Love again. They grab him and like start garroting him or something, knock him out. And then we cut to him waking up in bondage gear with a ball gag in his mouth, screaming. And then the person in black emerges, and it was a woman, just like in Alan's film, but she's got a whip. And then a film director yells "cut," and we see that he's on a quote-unquote film set. Why is Bond on the set of a porn film, you might ask? Well, it's a flashback, right? or rather, it's a flash forward. This is a flashback. We're going to see.
Oh, so that's the plot, and then the rest of the film is a flashback of how he got there.
So we see the canal from the end of the last film, and there's some shifty guy wearing a diving suit. He gets in the water, comes out with the film that was chucked in there. Ooh. He leaks it to the press, and everyone goes crazy, sharing this illicit film around and organising underground screenings of the thing. I'm not really sure how a film of a guy having sex would have been that big a deal in the 60s, but like whatever they were planning to happen in From Russia with Love basically happened.
I was wondering the same thing, actually.
Yeah, because they didn't have videotape or anything, so how was it going to circulate?
But was James Bond like famous enough that they would have like ruined his reputation? Like, who were they going to send it to? To M? But he would have just gone like, yeah, I was shagging that girl I went to shag. Like, you sent me there to do it. Like, I don't know what the threat was of the film. Because nobody knows who he is, so I'm not supposed to.
I guess it would discredit him, but then, like you say, I don't really know why, because it's sort of like, well, who's actually going to watch it? Yeah. It's not like people can, like, download it and...
Well, whatever the plan was, it happens in this film. And they send it off to the media as well, so the papers are running around printing, like, pictures of it and stuff. And it turns out that Bond has a giant knob. And the shitstorm kicks off, and it just leads to Bond being fired because it's a bit of a PR nightmare. Because he's not able to get a decent job anywhere. Everyone recognises him now because even little old ladies have been reading the news in the newspaper, in the papers. So we jump forward 14 years to 1977, and we meet Bond working at a nightclub as a dishwasher, where he runs into a porn filmmaker. I figured he'd be a dodgy brother of Q, just so we can have him played by the same actor. I thought that would be nice, just to keep some Bond elements going. He recognises him from The Scandal all those years ago, and he auditions him by watching him have sex with a woman. This is the Bond girl for the film, and I couldn't think of a more sexually suggestive name than they've already done, so I'm just going to call her Sex. Cut out the middleman. And they star in a series of successful porn films together, the James Bondage series. His porn name is James Bond, seeing as it's just a code name, so it's already an alias.
What? Fuck off. What?
In this story world, when he had to leave his job, did they get someone else to be James Bond? They just replaced the code name?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Because obviously Calvin is, as we know, that every time a new actor takes over James Bond, it's not the same character.
It's just the code name. Someone else takes up the mantle of 007.
So he's using James Bond as his porn alias anyway, and they live a carefree life, having fun. But then we move forward into the 80s, and cocaine becomes a thing, and Bond starts to have trouble getting an erection and falls into violent mood swings and becomes upset when a new leading man enters the scene. He's basically the villain for this one. So I've decided to make him a combination of Blofeld and Oddjob that I've called Oddfeld. And Bond hits rock bottom, tries to start a rock band with the boom operator. No one's interested. He's all washed up. And
was that an Orgasmo reference?
No. I am doing a film here, but I'll wait and see till you get there. Then the videotape era begins. We're in the 80s. Bond's been resisting videotape, but because he thinks it looks cheap and it's diminishing the industry, and just porn isn't what it was in the 70s. It's cheaper and rubbish. But he's at rock bottom. No one cares about him anymore as well. But then his original sex tape goes viral, so to speak. Obviously not viral because the internet doesn't exist yet. But in the 80s when people would pass around bootleg copies of the Star Wars Holiday Special, it's that sort of thing. So people are making copies of copies of copies and passing them around of the James Bond sex tape. It becomes this huge underground hit, which catapults Bond back to top as the best porn star ever, So he and Sex start production on their first title to be shot on video for the new market, and he sort of bigs himself up in the mirror to go and like do her, and he's got a big knob again, and it's a fairly happy ending for Bond.
Ah, that's Boogie Nights, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Well, I'm really surprised that neither of you did a pitch about like a lesbian romance
Why?
centered around Rosa Club, because that was what I.
Because that's where we always go to
Well,
straight
yeah,
away.
I was sure that one of you was going to do that, so I decided not to.
I didn't know Rosa Klebb was supposed to be a lesbian, though.
Yeah, they're
Other than she was an ugly woman in a 60s film and therefore had to be a lesbian.
pretty much. Because it's whenever there is a female villain like that, they always have to be older and a bit sort of, you know, blokish.
Lesbians don't exist in the James Bond universe. They're all like into Bond. There's no one in those films that he couldn't like swing over to his side if he wanted to.
Isn't Pussy Galore a lesbian and then he rapes it out of her?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, great.
But the excuse is the excuse is that you know, because obviously if she was straight, then Bond would be able to appeal to her, but he can't. But yeah, no, there are moments in the film where she's like, when she's like interviewing Tanya, and she says like, "Oh, you're a fine looking girl," and it just. That just sort of lingers for a bit, but then later on she's like, she puts her hand on her knee and then she like moves uncomfortably and then she takes it off. It's very subtle, but it is in there.
Well, I didn't pick up on that. I also didn't think Ben-Hur was gay though, so you know. Maybe I just don't pick up on these things.
Okay, shall I get to my pitch?
Is yours actually a real film?
It's more of a serious one, I would say. It's more of a sort of a Red Grant origin story.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah.
we focus in totally on him, and you know the first like 20 minutes of the film is him living his life in Ireland, and you know we wanted to treat him as like a sympathetic protagonist. So he's had a bit of a hard life, and he's eventually scouted by some Spectre agent and taken to the training camp. I'm thinking that maybe he like works on a farm or something like that, and he's scouted because he's particularly cold when slaughtering the animals. So they think, there's something to this guy.
It's so super.
Well, I like that, especially with how Daniel Craig plays Bond now. Like, Bond and Grant are kind of, you know, there's not much difference between them, especially the Bond of the book, who is a sociopath, like, you know, a violent, cold-blooded killer. Much of the film is set in the Spectre training camp. I kind of wish that the film spent more time there, because I think it is sort of a interesting and kind of cool place, like this like training ground for villains.
Oh, so is this like Police Academy, but Bond Villain Academy?
I was thinking, you know, Kingsman. Have you seen Kingsman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking kind of like that. So I think the main emotional angle for the film is going to be that Grant makes a friend, or maybe he has a friend in Ireland who came with him, because I want a sort of a bromance sort of thing.
I'm worried about this. I'm worried. I think something's going to happen, and it's going to really. This is we're going to find out what turned Grant evil.
Oh my god, you yeah.
I'm worried about the friend.
You know where I'm going with this. So him and Grant are like busy mates and whatever, and his friend gets an assignment. He has to go and do his villainous thing, and it turns out that he's actually sent to Dr. No's place at Crab Key. Because he's Chinese, so all the Chinese Spectre agents are being sent over to Dr. No's place because some big stuff's going down there. And it's like, goodbye, like, oh, see you later, mate, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously the guy dies because Crab Key is blown up, and that's what turns Grant evil, because he's, up until this point, he's sort of like, well, don't know if this life is really for me. But then learning that his friend passed away as a result of a British agent.
And we see the negative consequences of Bond's actions.
Yes. Yeah, and the film would basically end with Grant getting his kit on and heading in.
That makes a change.
And heading into the maze at night.
I see.
The film.
Oh, do you know what he should have done?
What?
He's in this training exercise, and he kills the Bond guy, and then he pulls the mask off, and it's his friend.
Oh, that would have been good. Oh, I kind of want the friend, like the reveal of the friend, like where he was going, because obviously, presumably, the audience has seen Doctor No at this point.
Yeah.
What's the name of this film?
Oh, I didn't think.
It's called To Russia with My Mate. What could possibly go wrong?
So those are our pitches for sequels to From Russia with Love. Please let us know what you thought of our ideas at facebook.com/Diminishing Returns podcast and Twitter at Dim Returns Pod. Please rate and review us on iTunes so that other listeners like yourself can find us, and please subscribe to us there. Do join us next week when we will be pitching sequels to one of the most controversial films ever made. But until next week, so long.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.